Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing amazing. How you doing, Neil? Can't wait to talk to Cash Flo.
That's right. And Cash Flow, you know, he broke into the business about the same time I was. And, I've been retired, but I'm going to maybe, you never know, get back in the ring. But Cash Flow, again, everyone knows him from Netflix Wrestlers, which I watched the entire documentary series, and it was unbelievable. And Cash, kind of talk to us. Let's jump right into specifically enough your wrestling career, but we'll get to wrestlers later.
Sounds good.
Why did you want to be a professional wrestler? What was that thing that told you? Because I have my story as well. I was kind of recruited to be one, being a legitimate 6'10", but kind of tell me, how that happened.
Pro wrestling was a mainstay in my house as a kid. I grew up watching it. I grew up with grandparents. Wahoo and Manny going at it. And that stuff is real. That is something that I want to do. And it started as soon as I got out of high school. I went to a wrestling school and I hit the ground running. It's just something that I've always wanted to do.
Wow. Who were your favorite wrestlers when you were growing up as a kid?
The Wahoo McDaniel, Manny Fernandez, Dusty Rhodes. Those are the guys that really, Ric Flair, those are the guys that really got me watching. Of course, I went back to, Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen. There was nothing like watching a crowd part like the Red Sea when Bruiser Brody would come through. I mean, it was just, that stuff was amazing. Of course, I was a Crockett guy. I was a Southern wrestling guy coming up. I didn't really, do a whole lot of the Northern wrestling. That wasn't until later, until, the Monday Night Wars and stuff like that started. So,
it's interesting, Cash Flow. The first show I was on was with Wahoo McDaniel. I didn't wrestle him, but I was on the same show with him.
That's
show.
Amazing. That is amazing.
It was in Parkersburg, West Virginia, at some cowboy. I forgot who I wrestled for. It wasn't Arpin. It was another promoter out there, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And so many.
I'm envious, Neil. I'm envious.
And you're envious. Well, so kind of breaking down, who trained you as a professional wrestler? Who did you get trained by?
I broke into business at IWA Mid-South in the mid-90s. Ian Rotten trained me, but, I can't really say that. There was a lot of guys come through, guys like Bull Payne, Tracy Smothers, Doug Gilbert. A lot of those guys had a hand. Madman Pondo, a lot of those guys had a hand in bringing me into professional wrestling. I can't really corner down just one of them because I'd learned so much from every single one of those guys that come through.
Well, Cash Flow, what's like the most exciting thing for you when you're doing a show, when you're out there in the ring? What's like, tell me about that. What's that like?
The crowd reaction is off the chain. That's really why we do any of that. Of course, money is good. We like to make money.
Yeah.
But the crowd reaction is really what you want. The ability to tell a story and actually feel those emotions in those stories. Those are the greatest feelings in the world. There's nothing like it. I always said professional wrestling and adrenaline is probably the best and the worst drug in the world. It can do irreparable harm at the same time. It can have you feeling like you're on cloud nine. It's something else.
Behind the scenes of professional wrestling, that's a great point you made, Cash, is that, everything, all the politics before the match. But once you get into the match, it's worth it all. But it's not worth all the other stuff. As you see, from, tearing down rings to being, worrying if you're going to get paid, if you're going to be able to sleep the next day, all these things is independent wrestling. And I think that's the thing. It's interesting. You talked about Bull Payne, worked with Bull out and with Burt Prentice. I was with Doug when I did USWA. You ran into all these guys and you just understood this business. But the thing is, it was breaking in and the business changed so much. Like I started back in 1993. So I missed out. If I would have broken in 88, I don't know where I would have been because there was not many people even got the opportunity. Then schools started. Charlie Fulton's who trained me. I got trained by Iron Mike Sharp as well. So I understood this. So the thing is, it's about hustling. When you are in the business, you work again for Ian, but then you got to figure out where else am I going to work? How am I going to learn this business? Because you just were thrown to the wolves. And that's how the business was at that time. It's, especially being a hardcore wrestler when you started, because I remember watching that. So Wendy kind of just said, the hardcore is cool, but I want to learn more and more about wrestling and learn from other guys. It's just basically figuring it all out, right?
It's basically figuring it all out. Hardcore wrestling is kind of a niche product of professional wrestling. The principle still applies. It's basically the same thing. You're just using different tactics and different gimmicks to garner that emotional response. And don't get me wrong. I honestly don't believe professional wrestling has changed not one bit. The only thing that's really changed is society around it. So more people. The people are different that are watching it. Therefore, you have to kind of evolve when it comes to that. There's still, the predetermined finish and all that stuff. The crowd emotions are the same. The guys that get over are the guys that are the best storytellers. To me, the principle of pro wrestling has changed. It's just the people that watching it have changed a bit. So you kind of have to go with the flow a little bit.
Got it. What are a couple of your favorite matches or shows that you've done? Like, who was it against, and what was it like? And tell me about those.
One of my favorites, like off the top of my head, the most recent one's probably doing a tag match against Al Snow up in Wisconsin. That was amazing. That was one of those bucket list things that you have. You become a fan of somebody, and then when you finally get the opportunity of getting the ring, I've actually been fortunate to have a lot of those, be in the ring with a lot of the guys that I kind of idolized coming up, being a Southern wrestling guy, like Dundee and Lawler and Dutch Mantell and Jeff Jarrett, guys like that, Al Snow. That's one of the most recent ones. One of the older ones, shortly before Tracy Smothers passed, I got the opportunity to be in the ring with him about a year and a half before he ended up passing. And, I hold that one pretty dear to my heart. It's on my YouTube channel. So, some of the older ones, I've had a lengthy career. I don't remember a whole lot. I have to go back and look at some of my stuff, but some of those are the ones that kind of stick in my head.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you get in the ring with Lawler or Bill Dundee, what you learn. And Al Snow.
Absolutely.
It's like you take two matches with Jerry the King Lawler, which I got to wrestle him, I think 3 or 4 times. On top, I wrestled him in the Mid-South Coliseum for the title, but wrestled him. It was so easy, but he taught you so much about the showmanship in a match. Same with Bill Dundee. I traveled the road with Bill, and I learned these things. And this is what this Netflix wrestlers documentary shows. It shows a lot of these independent wrestlers what it means to be in a territory. It was interesting. I mentioned that before. You guys have built something that's like a territory, but also like a big organization where you're doing the TV weekly. You're doing all the stuff I did with Burt Prentice and Ozark Mountain Wrestling and North American All-Star Wrestling and PWX. And just, we're doing the weekly TV. You're doing all these different things. It really helps. And I think you really shaped to understand guys that are looking to break into wrestling with wrestlers. But once you first heard about doing a documentary, what were your thoughts? I mean, a series like Netflix. I mean, that was a game changer, wasn't it?
It was a game changer, but I'm an old school type of guy, so it made me a bit nervous, because I kind of had a feeling what we were going to have to put out there for it to really succeed, and I was apprehensible at first. My family was apprehensible at first, but we just decided one day, hey, let's do it. Let's put it out there. Let's see where it goes. What's the worst that could happen? That was kind of what was going on in our head. Luckily, the crew, the producers, and the director, they were so easy to be around, and it made it very easy to do that. But at first, me and my family, we were a bit apprehensive about doing it, but they made it easy to do it, and I'm actually glad they told the story the way that they told it. I wanted I wanted it to portray positivity and quit with the bad stuff, the negative energy that's surrounded professional wrestling for so long. I wanted something to be positive, and I think the crew, the BBC crew, and the director Greg Whiteley, I think they hit the nail on the head with that, Neil.
Oh, they did. It was amazing. And I guess the ratings were through this roof, for sure. Greg basically did follow all these independent wrestlers for this organization called Ohio Valley Championship Wrestling, or OVW. And it basically taught, specifically, they're one of the only organizations that does live TV and pay-per-views. There's only 4 organizations. We didn't mention the one in the documentary, which I won't, but there's only really 4 pro wrestling organizations in the United States that offer this type of an opportunity. And these guys work a lot of nights, like I did when I worked down south, which is unheard of, but it followed those wrestlers and the challenges they had to go through, and also the business side of it. Greg, the business side of it was probably the most experience, because they had people who were backing Al Snow's organization, money backers, and you had to go and see about how it was all about making money at the end of the day, not putting on just a great show.
Gotcha. So you're saying there's different organizations. Like, I mean, back, I remember as a kid, like Hulk Hogan, McMahon, that group and all that. That's different than like the Ohio Valley. And so
explain how it is still almost the same in a way, with there's no regionals, but really they're one of the big 3 or 4, right? Tell us that.
We are, there's more money and more longevity behind guys like Vince McMahon, WWE, and stuff like that. There's just more money behind. We are really the grassroots of what Vince McMahon and those guys are. This is where guys go to cut their teeth in that particular business model when it comes to doing live TV, territory type professional wrestling shows. This is where you're really taught the business to get to the next level of professional wrestling, which is, like WWE and where the big money is. So
gotcha.
And then if they get discovered, you get over. And Cash, it's changed in a lot of ways where you get signed. It's basically your popularity, especially AEW. AEW signs people based on how they got over in the independents. That's what makes AEW different than WWE, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And now you have more platforms as a young up and comer. With social media in the mix, you can make yourself a star before they would even look at you. But you would still have an opportunity to get there if your star shines bright enough. It's a pretty amazing time. It's a pretty amazing time in professional wrestling right now.
Wow. So you're saying, like, start off like where you are, maybe even a different league. And then if you wanted to get notoriety and, become more famous and kind of work up towards, like, it seems like some of these people like Dwayne Johnson, like The Rock, went to Hollywood after a while. And so that's kind of more of a path to stardom as opposed to sport and show.
It's definitely a slingshot to other platforms that can use your star power.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that do make it big tend to, that seems to be these days to be a natural evolution of a professional wrestler. You get at a certain age where, getting bumped around and getting thrown around is become too tough on you. You take that star power, you go to a production company, or you start, filling out some acting gigs, and they start hiring you just because you're known. They put your name on that screen. It's going to draw viewers. It's the same principle, just maybe a different process,
Gotcha.
Being on television when I was working down south for Burt Prentice and Ozark Mountain, where I got discovered at the grocery stores and doing different things, you got to see that in OVW. But once you went on Netflix, life changed, right? People really saw your story. Greg, they went into his house. They went into his family. They documented everything. Yeah, they went after every little thing about him, even the breakdown of the business and how long he's been, showed films. It was just such a great document. It was such a great...
Neil, I had to hold my wife back a couple of times because she would be cooking supper, have supper halfway done, and they would come barging in with 3 truckfuls of camera, keep us from eating supper, wanting to do interviews and stuff in the middle of supper time. So, it was pretty intrusive, but I think me and my wife have talked it out. It's definitely been worth it. It's been worth it. It's the notoriety is out the roof right now.
So how much do you get recognized now?
Everywhere I go. It's everywhere I go, especially, around my neighborhood. Like, I'd be walking the dog down the street and people will drive by hollering at me, screaming out the windows, hey, Cash, what are you doing? So it's something else. It's a sight to be seen. Grocery shopping's fun these days.
Have to sign a lot of autographs. That's for sure.
A lot of autographs, taking a lot of pictures inside the grocery store. Yeah,
A lot of selfies. Hey, can I get a selfie?
Yeah, a lot of selfies.
How did that even come about? I mean, did Netflix just decide to do it and just sought you guys out, or how?
I honestly, Greg, I don't know the gist of how it got worked out. All of a sudden, the owners of OVW reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested in doing this? Can you do?" It was a couple years ago. Can you do this Zoom meeting with this production crew that has an idea of something that they want to do? Well, that's where it started. I had my Zoom meeting with BBC Studios, and those guys are amazing, by the way. And that's where it started, and it got put together and it got sold, and here we are.
Now
Cool.
let's talk. So I was reading about it. I didn't know Last Chance U is the same producers. Is that true? That were Last
Same
Chance?
director, same director. I don't know if it's produced by the same company, but it is the same director, Greg Whiteley. Yeah, he's Emmy Award winning guy.
Last Chance U, I've always been a fan of, and I ended up interviewing one of them that ended up being in Podcast Magazine, and then I finally watched the series. His one, it was the one in Kansas, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a person. So your characters are really real life, and I think it in so many ways it's so interesting. Now, Greg, I'll throw one more question in them, and then we'll kind of go with any other questions.
Yeah, go for it.
But because it intrigues me, because again, the business in so many ways. Now, looking back at the Attitude Era to today, what do you think? Do you think we're going back? Do you think guys I see a lot of guys taking tons of bumps, but other people are telling stories, and you guys are more storytelling? As I remember when I interviewed Al a couple years ago with Jim Miller and Aaron Lester, and I got to go back and find that and re-air it now again because I have that footage somewhere. What do you think of this business? Do you think we're going to go back to stories? Do you think we're going in a cyclical, historical way of wrestling, and we're going to go back to wrestling as it was?
Of course. It all comes in cycles. At one point, taking all these bumps and all the aerial stuff was something new and fresh and different. That's why it was good. Okay. Before that, it was straight storytelling, straight on, and that was the thing that wrestling is. Well, if you bring that back out to the forefront now, what's old is new again. So it's all cycles. It all comes in cycles, and I think that's where we're going. I think that's why OVW excels right now because of the Office and the stories that they try to tell, and the way they get the guys, the employee, the workers on board with it. It ultimately it comes down to the guys that are telling the stories for Al and the Office. And I believe those guys are stepping up to the plate, and Al's giving them the ball, and we're starting to run with it, and it's doing really well. We're working on our 9th consecutive show that we've been sold out, as far as in the arena and stuff like that. So it's doing really well. And yeah, I do believe it comes in cycles, Neil. I do.
I hope so, because that's what brings the families, and that brings it where there's a real story, and you get the good versus evil. The bad guy, the heel versus baby faces. You were such a Southern fan. I got to live it working, with in a program with Dundee, a program with Lawler, a program with I did a lot with Colorado Kid. I don't even know where the heck he's at, but you remember watching all that stuff when you were
I knew Colorado Kid. I worked for Burt a little bit too down there. You probably wasn't around, but I did my rounds in Tennessee. I worked for Burt Prentice. I worked for a guy named Mike Porter down there when they were doing, they had.
So when Burt was doing Nashville, I came back to Northeast, and that's when I was working with Rhino and all that. So we did not cross paths, but maybe we will.
You never know.
You never know. I'm just going to go right now. You never know about a comeback. And Greg's like, please don't let that happen. Okay, so Greg, I'm going to go ahead. Say, be safe, Neil. Be safe. But when you see guys working like Flair, again, another match, and guys working in their 60s, if we don't take those bumps, we'll be okay. But if we're both those hardcore matches, I've been there, done it for sure. I got to connect you to my concussion guy, and that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Dr. Charles Simkovich, who's the guru that's finally figuring out reverse concussion, CTE, all that stuff. But Greg, I'm going to have you ask the question to Cash that you ask every celebrity, and I might have one more question for Cash after that. Go ahead, Greg.
That sounds great. So Cash, I love to learn from people, especially successful people like yourself. Right. And I know the people that listen to our show do as well. So tell me, what do you think the most important thing you've ever learned in life is?
The most important thing that I have ever learned in life, you need a support system. Rome wasn't built by a single person. It takes a group. And in this instance, my family's support, you need a good support system behind you. And I attribute that to anything. If you're running a wrestling program, you need a support system. You can't do everything it needs. It takes a good team. In life, it takes a good team to get where you want to get. If you don't have a support system, don't be afraid to reach out and find a support system, because there is somebody or some people out there for everyone. A support system is crucial to living life to the fullest.
Cool.
That's a fantastic. Oh man, that's a let's go. Well, Cash, now you know what? I'm still in pretty good shape at 50 years old. I think I could wrestle you. I mean, again, you were afraid to cross paths with me. That's why when I went to the Northeast South, and yeah, you're afraid of a six. Yeah, you were. So what would happen if we end up having a match sometime? And these promoters out in Northeast, they can make it happen. Again, OVW can make it happen. Again, when I put my boots on, I'm a legitimate 7 feet tall. I have some big wins. I was PWI 500. You're a superstar. Someday it's got to win. I think my experience level, I think I could take you if I get back in shape.
Hey, there is nothing to it but to do it. There is nothing to it but to do it. We can talk all day long. I've been in PWI. I was in PWI at 321 this year.
All right.
And there's not much of an age difference there between us, Neil, whether you think so or not.
No, I know. I have a feeling I know that. Okay.
I'm not 7 foot tall, but I'm a pretty hefty guy. I'm kind of wide. So
okay. So what are you weighing right now? I'm weighing in about 280 something.
I'm 6'4". I weigh 320.
Okay. All right. Well, you never know. I got to get in shape, and then we'll make this happen. But we're definitely going to stay connected with all the different things, and we appreciate and make sure more OVW wrestlers can come on. And I just, but when is this happening? I hope they don't do it like Last Chance U. You guys need to have continue this story, in my opinion, and not they go and pick another organization like they did with Last Chance U. People love the story.
I would agree totally, Neil. I think those guys, I don't think the story is completely told. I don't think OVW story is completely told. And I would love for those guys to pick it back up and give the fans, because that's all we're hearing, a lot of those rumblings about it. We would love for the fans to actually hear the complete story.
Yeah, and that's it, because the story was not completely told. It was told then, but then the final story. So again, people can check it out, Netflix, wrestlers. And where can we find information on you social media wise and stuff? Where can we go?
Hey, social media, all my social media wise, Neil, is at Cash Flo Wrestler. That's my Instagram, my Twitter, my Threads, my Facebook. If any of you guys out there, any of your listeners is looking for any good Cash Flo merch, you can go to www.chopshopwrestling.com. You'll find all my swag on there. You can find me on Cameo if you need a shout out, a birthday shout out, or whatever. That's pretty much it.
All right, we appreciate it, Cash. Thanks again, man.
Thanks,
all right, that was the simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Celebrity Interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Guys, take care.